His fingers traced along my spine, slow and deliberate, sending waves of heat through my entire body. I shouldn't have been here with him, shouldn't have let him guide me up those crumbling stone steps, shouldn't have felt my breath catch every time his hand steadied me in the darkness. But when Caney whispered my name in that low, rough voice, all my reasons for staying away crumbled like the ancient walls around us. "Serena," he murmured, his breath warm against my neck. "Tell me to stop." But I couldn't. I didn't want him to. Instead, I turned in his arms, my body pressing against his, and whispered back, "Don't you dare." Enjoyed that opening? Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what pulled you in. The tower had been abandoned for decades, its spiraling staircase worn smooth by time and weather. I'd driven out here on impulse, needing space from Lance's empty house, from the silence that had settled between us like dust. When Caney's text came through, "Saw you drive past, everything okay?" I almost ignored it. My stepbrother had always been too perceptive, too willing to check on me when I needed solitude. But something made me respond, and now here we were, climbing through shadows with only our phone lights to guide us. "Careful," he said, his hand finding the small of my back as I navigated a particularly steep section. The touch was innocent, protective, but it sent electricity through me nonetheless. We'd been careful for years, Caney and I, maintaining the proper distance that our family situation demanded. But tonight felt different. Tonight, with Lance 2,000 miles away on another business trip and the autumn wind howling through, the broken stones, the careful boundaries we'd built seemed as fragile as the crumbling mortar around us. "Why did you really come out here?" he asked as we reached a landing. His voice was softer now, more intimate in the confined space. I turned to face him, our bodies closer than they should have been in the narrow passage. "I needed to think," I said, but even as the words left my lips, I knew they weren't entirely true. I'd needed to escape, yes. But from what? From Lance's increasing absence? From the growing distance in our marriage? Or from the way my heart raced every time Caney was near? His free hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face, the gesture achingly gentle. About what? I should have stepped back, should have created distance. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch. About things I shouldn't be thinking about. The admission hung between us like a challenge. Caney's eyes searched mine in the dim light, and I saw the exact moment he understood what I meant. The careful control he'd always maintained around me flickered, just for a second, but it was enough to show me the hunger he'd been hiding. "Serena," he started, but I cut him off. "I know what you're going to say. I know all the reasons why. This is wrong." My voice was barely above a whisper. "But I've been thinking about you for months, Caney. About us. About what it would feel like if we stopped pretending there's nothing between us." His breath caught, and I saw his resolve wavering. "You're married." "I'm lonely," I countered, stepping closer. "Lance hasn't touched me in weeks. He's so focused on his career that I've become invisible in my own marriage. But you see me." "I've always seen you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "From the moment our parents got married and you became part of my family, I've been fighting this. Fighting the way you make me feel." The confession broke something open between us. Without another word, he pulled me against him, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that was desperate, hungry, full of years of suppressed longing. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt as I kissed him back with equal fervor. We broke apart, both breathing hard. "We should go back," he said, but his hands remained on my waist, holding me close. "Not yet," I whispered. "Please, not yet." He studied my face in the pale light, searching for any sign of doubt. Finding none, he took my hand and led me up the remaining steps to the top of the tower. The circular room at the summit was open to the night sky, its roof long since collapsed. Moonlight streamed through the gaps, casting everything in silver and shadow. "It's beautiful," I breathed, looking up at the stars visible through the broken stones. "You're beautiful," he said, and when I turned to look at him, the intensity in his gaze took my breath away. This time when he kissed me, it was slower, more deliberate. His hands tangled in my hair as I pressed myself against him, feeling the solid strength of his body through our clothes. Every touch sent fire through my veins, awakening desires I'd thought were dead. His lips trailed from my mouth to my jaw, then lowered to the sensitive spot where my neck met my shoulder. I gasped, my head falling back to give him better access. His hands roamed over my curves, reacquainting themselves with the body he'd admired from afar for so long. "Tell me you want this," he murmured against my skin. "Tell me you're sure." "Want you," I breathed, my fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. "I've wanted you for so long, Caney. I'm tired of pretending otherwise." With infinite care, he began to undress me, his fingers skimming over newly exposed skin like he was memorizing every inch. When the cool night air hit my heated flesh, I shivered, but his warmth surrounded me, chasing away the chill. He spread his jacket on the stone floor, creating a makeshift bed in our ruined sanctuary. When he lowered me onto it, I felt like a goddess being worshipped by a devoted lover. His mouth followed the path his hands had traced, leaving trails of fire in their wake. "So perfect," he whispered against my stomach, his breath hot on my skin. "I've dreamed of this, of you, but the reality is so much better." I arched beneath him, my body singing with pleasure as he continued his slow exploration. When his mouth found my most sensitive spots, I cried out, the sound echoing off the ancient stones. He worked me with patient skill, bringing me to the edge again and again before pulling back, making me writhe with need. "Please," I gasped, my hands tangling in his hair. "I need you." He moved up my body, his eyes locked on mine as he positioned himself above me. "Are you certain?" he asked one more time, giving me a final chance to change my mind. Instead of answering with words, I pulled him down for another kiss, pouring all my longing, all my need, into the connection between our lips. He groaned against my mouth and slowly, carefully, made us one. The sensation was overwhelming. After months of feeling disconnected from my own body, of going through the motions of a marriage that had grown cold, this felt like coming alive again. Caney moved within me with a reverence that brought tears to my eyes, as if he couldn't quite believe this was real. "I love you," he whispered against my ear, the words torn from somewhere deep inside him. "I know I shouldn't, know it's complicated, but I can't help it. I love you, Serena." The confession shattered the last of my restraint. I clung to him as we moved together, our bodies finding a rhythm as old as time itself. The world outside our stone sanctuary ceased to exist. There was only this moment, only the two of us wrapped in moonlight and desire. When the pleasure finally crested, it was with an intensity that left me shaking in his arms. He followed moments later, my name a prayer on his lips as he buried his face in my neck. We lay there afterward, limbs entwined, hearts still racing, neither of us willing to break the spell that had settled over us. "What happens now?" I asked finally, my voice small in the darkness. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers stroking through my hair. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't regret this. I won't regret this." I wanted to say the same, wanted to live in this perfect bubble where nothing existed except the two of us. But reality was already creeping in at the edges, bringing with it guilt and uncertainty. "Lance will be back next week," I said. "I know." His arms tightened around me. "But that doesn't change how I feel about you. It doesn't change what just happened between us." We dressed slowly, reluctant to end this stolen time together. The descent from the tower felt like leaving a dream, each step taking us further from the magic we'd created in those ancient stones. At our cars, he pulled me. "Close one more time." "This isn't over," he said, his forehead resting against mine. "Whatever happens, whatever we decide, this isn't over." I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. Then I got in my car and drove home to the empty house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. The next morning brought harsh sunlight and harsher reality. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the coffee maker while memories of the night before played on repeat in my mind. My body still hummed with the memory of Caney's touch, still craved the connection we'd shared. My phone buzzed with a text from Lance. "Flight delayed. Won't be home until Thursday. Hope you're not too lonely." Too lonely. If only he knew how accurately that described the state of our marriage. But instead of the familiar pang of sadness, I felt something else entirely. Anticipation. Because Thursday was still days away, and Caney was only a phone call away from coming over. The thought should have horrified me. Should have sent me running to confession or couples therapy or anywhere that might help me make sense of what I'd done. Instead, I found myself reaching for my phone, typing out a message before I could think better of it. "Can't stop thinking." About last night. His response came almost immediately. "Neither can I. Are you okay?" Was I okay? I just committed adultery with my stepbrother, shattered my marriage vows, and opened a door that could never be closed. By any reasonable measure, I should be falling apart. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in months. "Come over," I typed, my heart hammering as I hit send. The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared and disappeared several times before his response finally came through. "Are you sure?" I thought about Lance, about the promises we'd made at our wedding altar. I thought about the careful distance Caney and I had maintained for years. I thought about all the reasons this was wrong, all the ways it could destroy everything. Then I thought about how it felt to be desired again, to be cherished, to feel like I mattered to someone. I'm sure. 20 minutes later, I heard his car, in the driveway. I opened the door before he could knock, and the moment our eyes met, I knew there would be no going back. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and we came together like magnets, all pretense abandoned. I've been going. Crazy, he murmured against my lips. Thinking about you, about last night. I can't focus on anything else. Then don't, I whispered back, already working at the buttons of his shirt. Think about this instead. We didn't make it past the living room. He lifted me onto the couch, his mouth finding mine with desperate hunger while his hands reacquainted themselves with my body. Sunlight streamed through the windows, so different from the romantic moonlight of the tower, but somehow just as perfect. This time there was no hesitation, no final requests for confirmation. We both knew what we wanted, what we needed from each other. When he moved within me, it was with the confidence of a lover who knew exactly how to make me sing. God, you feel incredible, he groaned, his forehead pressed against mine as we moved, together. I could stay inside you forever. The thought sent a shiver through me. Forever? What would that look like? A life with Caney instead of Lance? Or would we be relegated to stolen moments like this? Secret encounters that would tear us both apart with guilt? But then his thumb found that perfect spot, and all coherent thought fled. I arched beneath him, crying out as pleasure rolled through me in waves. He swallowed my moans with his kisses, his own breathing becoming ragged as he chased his own. Release. When we finally came back to Earth, we lay tangled together on my marital couch, the irony not lost on either of us. We're playing with fire, I said softly, tracing patterns on his chest. I know. His arms tightened around me, but I can't seem to care. Not when being with you feels this right. Right. That was the word that had been eluding me. Despite all the moral complications, despite the potential for devastating consequences, this felt right in a way my marriage never had. What are we going to do? I asked. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I can't give this up, can't give you up, not now that I know what it's like to hold you, to make love to you. Make love, not just physical connection, but something deeper, more meaningful. The distinction made my heart race and my stomach clench with equal measure. Over the next few days, we fell into a dangerous pattern. He would come over in the mornings after his job site meetings, and we would lose ourselves in each other until the afternoon sun forced us back to reality. Each encounter was more intense than the last, our bodies learning each other's rhythms, our connection deepening beyond the purely physical. I love the way you respond to me, he whispered during one particularly languid afternoon session. We were in my bedroom, another line crossed, with golden light painting our entwined bodies. The little sounds you make, the way your body moves beneath mine. It's like you were made for me, made for him. The thought should have been absurd, considering our family connection, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like a truth I'd been denying for too long. Maybe I was, I whispered back, the admission scary in its honesty. He stilled above me, his eyes searching mine. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I think I've been yours long before either of us admitted it. Maybe that's why my marriage feels so empty. Maybe I was trying to love the wrong man. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. If I was his, if this connection was real and not just forbidden attraction, then what did that mean for the life I'd built with Lance? Serena, he started, but I silenced him with a kiss, not ready to face the full implications of what I'd just confessed. Instead, I focused on the present, on the way he moved within me, on the perfect friction between our bodies. I let myself drown in sensation, in the way he whispered my name like a prayer, in the overwhelming rightness of being exactly where I was. Thursday arrived like a death sentence. Lance's flight was due in at 6, which meant I had mere hours left of this beautiful, terrible secret before reality crashed back in. Caney and I spent the morning in bed, neither of us speaking about the ticking clock, both of us trying to memorize every touch, every sensation. I should go, he said finally, though he made no move to leave my arms. I know. But I didn't release him either. This isn't over, he said, echoing his words from that first night in the tower. I don't know how we'll manage it, but this isn't over. I wanted to believe him, wanted to imagine a future where we could be together without destroying everyone around us. But as I watched him dress, as the familiar guilt began to settle in my chest, I wondered if we were just kidding ourselves. After he left, I cleaned the house obsessively, trying to erase any trace of our time together. But I couldn't clean the scent of him from my skin, couldn't wash away the tenderness between my legs that reminded me of every moment we'd shared. When Lance's key turned in the lock, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, looking, for all the world, like the dutiful wife I was supposed to be. Hey, beautiful, he said, dropping his suitcase by the door. Miss me? The casual endearment, so different from the way Caney spoke my name, Felt like sandpaper against my soul. Of course, I managed, accepting his perfunctory kiss on the cheek. Good trip? I asked, falling back into the routine of a conversation we'd had 100 times before. As he launched into details about meetings and contracts, I found myself studying his face, looking for something I might have missed, some sign of the connection I'd found with Caney. But there was nothing. Just the polite interest of a man going through the motions of marriage. That night, as Lance reached for me in our bed, I closed my eyes and tried to respond the way I should. But his touch felt foreign now, wrong, like a poor imitation of what I'd experienced with Caney. When he moved above me, I found myself thinking of stone walls and moonlight, of reverent whispers and desperate kisses. The guilt was overwhelming, but not for the reasons I expected. I felt guilty not for what I'd done with Caney, but for lying there beneath my husband and wishing he was someone else entirely. The following weeks were torture. I threw myself into the role of perfect wife, cooking elaborate meals, planning social events, anything to keep busy enough that I didn't have time to think about what I was missing. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped, hoping it was Caney. Every time I passed the old tower on my drives around town, I remembered the feel of ancient stones beneath my back and strong hands worshipping my body. Caney, for his part, seemed to understand the impossible position we were in. His texts were careful, innocent enough that Lance wouldn't think twice if he saw them. But I could read the subtext in every message, could feel the longing behind his casual check-ins. How, "Are you doing?" really meant "I miss you." "Hope you're taking care of yourself" translated to "I wish I could take care of you." Thinking of you needed no translation at all. The breaking point came 6 weeks later. Lance announced another business trip, this one longer than usual, 2 weeks in California closing a major deal. As he packed, chattering about the opportunity, and the bonus it would mean, all I could think about was 2 weeks of freedom, 2 weeks of possibility. "You'll be okay on your own?" he asked, barely looking up from his suitcase. "I'll be fine," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I meant it. The moment his taxi pulled away from the curb, I reached for my phone. He's gone. 2 weeks. Caney's response was immediate. "I'll be right there." When he arrived, we didn't speak. There was too much need, too much stored-up longing for words. We came together in the hallway, urgent and desperate, months of careful distance exploding into frantic touching and breathless kisses. "I've missed you so much," he groaned against my neck, his hands everywhere at once. I thought I was going crazy. "Me too," I gasped, already working at his clothes. "I need you, Caney. I need you so much it hurts." This time we made it to the bedroom, but barely. We fell onto the bed in a tangle of limbs and abandoned clothing, our bodies remembering exactly how to move together despite the time apart. When he finally moved within me again, I cried out with relief as much as pleasure. "Never again," he said fiercely, his eyes locked on mine. "I'm never going that long without you again." "Promise me," I whispered, wrapping my legs around him, pulling him deeper. "Promise me this is real. This is the most real thing in my life," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "You're the most real thing in my life." We made love with a desperation born of enforced separation, as if we could make up for all the lost time in a single encounter. But afterward, as we lay wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of our situation settled over us once again. 2 weeks, I said softly. 2 weeks, he agreed. What do we do with 2 weeks? I turned in his arms, studying his face in the afternoon light. He looked tired, worn down by the stress of hiding his feelings, of wanting something he couldn't have. The same exhaustion I'd been carrying for months. "We pretend," I said finally. "For 2 weeks, we pretend this is our life, that we're together. Because we choose to be, not because we're stealing moments between other obligations." A slow smile spread across his face. "I like that idea." "Good," I said, settling against his chest, "because I'm not letting you leave this bed for at least the next 12 hours. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Best imprisonment ever. Those 2 weeks were a revelation. Without the constant fear of discovery, without the need to hide and sneak around, we settled into a rhythm that felt achingly natural. Caney would arrive each morning with coffee and pastries from my favorite bakery. We'd spend our days talking, laughing, making love with a freedom we'd never experienced before. He cooked dinner for me, something Lance had never done in 5 years of marriage. We watched movies curled together on the couch, his fingers absently stroking my hair. We took long walks around the neighborhood, and I marveled at how different the familiar streets looked when I was happy. This is what it could be like, I said one evening as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset. "If things were different, this could be our life." "It still could be," he said quietly. I turned to look at him, my heart clenching at the hope in his voice. "You know it's not that simple? Why isn't it?" He shifted to face me fully. "You're miserable with Lance. You said so yourself. And I can't imagine my life without you anymore. Not after this. He's my husband, I said weakly, but even to my own ears, the protest sounded hollow. And I'm the man who loves you, he countered. Really loves you, not just goes through the motions, because it's expected. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. Lance and I had been going through the motions for months, maybe even years. When had I stopped loving him? When had our marriage become just a comfortable routine instead of a partnership built on passion and connection? I'm scared, I admitted. Of what? Of blowing up my entire life for something that might not last. Of hurting people. Of everyone finding out that I fell in love with my stepbrother. He reached for my hands, his touch gentle but insistent. I can't promise it will be easy. I can't promise people won't be hurt or judgmental. But I can promise that what I feel for you isn't going anywhere. This isn't some forbidden attraction that will burn itself out. This is love, Serena. Real, lasting, forever love. Forever. There was that word again, the one that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. What would we do? I asked. How would we even begin to untangle this mess? You'd leave him, he said simply. We'd deal with the family drama. We'd build a life together, openly, honestly. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. I closed my eyes trying to imagine it. Divorce papers, awkward family gatherings, explaining to friends why my marriage ended. But underneath all the practical concerns, I could picture something else. Waking up next to Caney every morning, building a home with him, maybe even having children together someday. I need time to think, I said finally. He nodded, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Of course, this is huge. I get that. But as the 2 weeks drew to a close, as Lance's return grew imminent once again, I realized I wasn't any closer to a decision. If anything, I was more confused than ever. Living with Caney had been paradise, but was it sustainable in the real world? Or were we just playing house, avoiding the harsh realities that would inevitably intrude? The night before Lance was due home, Caney and I lay in bed, neither of us sleeping despite the late hour. What happens tomorrow? He asked, his voice barely audible in the darkness. I don't know, I whispered back. I can't go back to the way things were, he said. Seeing you occasionally, pretending I don't love you, watching you live a lie with him, I can't do it, Serena. What are you saying? He was quiet for so long I thought he might have fallen asleep. Then, I'm saying that if you choose him, if you choose to stay in your marriage and pretend this never happened, then I need to step back, completely. I can't be around you and not be with you. It's destroying me. The ultimatum hung between us like a sword. Choose Lance and lose Caney forever. Choose Caney and blow up my entire carefully constructed life. That's not fair, I said. None of this is fair, he replied. But it's where we are. Lance's return the next evening felt like stepping back into a costume that no longer fit. He hugged me at the door, chattering about his successful trip, and I stood there rigid in his arms, hyper-aware of how wrong it felt after 2 weeks of Caney's embrace. Over dinner, as Lance detailed his meetings and future plans, I found myself studying him with new eyes. When had we stopped talking about anything that mattered? When had our conversations become nothing but surface-level pleasantries? You're quiet tonight, he observed, finally seeming to notice my distraction. Just tired, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I was exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the day, from trying to slip back into a role that felt increasingly foreign. That night, when he reached for me in bed, I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie there and let him touch me while thinking of someone else, couldn't fake the responses he expected when my body craved someone entirely different. I'm not feeling well, I said, rolling away from him. He accepted the excuse without question, already half asleep himself. But I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and thinking about impossible choices and ultimatums, and the man I'd fallen in love with, despite every reason I shouldn't have. The next few days passed in a blur of careful normalcy. Lance went back to work, settling into his routine as if he'd never been gone. I went through the motions of my daily life, but everything felt hollow, like I was watching someone else's existence from the outside. Caney kept his distance, true to his word. No texts, no unexpected visits, no casual encounters at family gatherings. The silence was deafening, and I found myself checking my phone obsessively, hoping for some sign that he hadn't meant what he said about stepping back completely. By the end of the week, I was a wreck. I'd barely eaten, hadn't slept properly, in days, and jumped every time the phone rang. Lance, characteristically oblivious, attributed my behavior to some vague women's troubles, and suggested I see a doctor. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man I'd married couldn't be bothered to dig deeper into my obvious distress, while the man I'd fallen in love with would have seen through my facade immediately. That's when I knew. Sitting in my kitchen on a Thursday morning, staring at my untouched coffee and feeling like a ghost in my own life, the clarity hit me like lightning. I wasn't just unhappy in my marriage, I was dying in it, slowly but surely. The past few months with Kanye had shown me what it felt like to be truly alive, truly seen, truly loved. How could I go back to existing when I now knew what it meant to really live? I picked up my phone and typed out a message before I could lose my nerve. "We need to talk." His response came within minutes. "Are you sure? Meet me at the tower." 1 hour. The drive out to the abandoned tower felt like traveling through time. When I arrived, Kanye was already there, leaning against his truck with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked as tired as I felt, as worn down by the impossible situation we'd created. "You came," I said, suddenly nervous now that the moment was here. "You asked me to," he said simply. "I'll always come when you need me." The simple statement, so matter-of-fact and full of devotion, nearly brought me to my tears. When was the last time Lance had said something like that to me? When was the last time I'd believed he meant it? "I've been thinking," I started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was about to say. "And," he prompted gently, "and you're right. I can't keep living a lie. I can't stay married to a man I don't love while being in love with someone else. It's not fair to any of us." Hope flickered in his eyes, but he held himself still, waiting for me to continue. "I'm going to leave him," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I'm going to file for divorce and end this marriage that should have ended years ago." "Serena," he breathed, taking a step toward me. "But," I continued, holding up a hand to stop him, "I need you to understand what this means. It's going to be messy, really messy. Our families are going to be devastated. Some of them might never forgive us. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been prepared for that since the first night we were together," he said. "I love you and I want to build a life with you. Whatever that costs, it's worth it." The certainty in his voice, the unwavering commitment, made my decision feel solid for the first time since this all began. "Then let's do it," I said. "Let's stop hiding and build something real together." He closed the distance between us in 2 quick strides, pulling me into his arms and spinning me around. When he set me down, we were both laughing and crying at the same time, giddy with the relief of finally choosing each other openly. "I love you," he said, framing my face with his hands. "I love you so much, Serena." "I love you too," I replied, the words feeling like coming home. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud." We climbed the tower one more time, returning to the place where it all began. But this time, when we made love among the ancient stones, it wasn't stolen or secret. It was a celebration, a claiming, a promise of all the nights we'd have together in the future. What would you do if you found yourself caught between duty and desire, between what's expected and what feels right? Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, regardless of the complications. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between safety and passion? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because things are about to get even more intense.